the Grey Hat Beard podcast.
Hello and welcome to show 29 of Grey Hat Beard, the modern workplace podcast where we talk about all things Microsoft 365. My name's Kevin McDonald. I'm the Grey of Grey Hat Beard. I'm a solutions architect at CPS.
My name's Alan Erdley. I'm the Hat of Grey Hat Beards, and I'm an Office MVP and a solution architect at CPS.
And we have today a stand-in beard again. Unfortunately, Gary has taken the week off and appears to be suffering. So in no way related to the fact he's meant to be painting his house this week. I'm sure not connected to that, but he's not feeling great. So I had to duck out today. So we put an emergency out on the TomToms, and we have Peter Rising joining us with an even more glorious beard than Gary, but don't tell him we said that. Peter, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Kev. Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Rising, Microsoft MVP in Office Apps and Services, and I'm a principal consultant at Softcat.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So first off, a bit of an apology. We said in the last show we were going to talk about part 2 with Rabia Williams. Unfortunately, with Ignite, and she's based in Australia trying to get time zones, we still haven't quite managed to schedule that. So we're going to schedule that as a part 2. We will also have a part 2 of this show. But today and in this part 1, we're just going to be talking about the latest news. And with Ignite happening last week, that's what we're going to focus on. Well, mostly, I think. We'll deviate a little bit.
We couldn't stay focused if we tried, could we? Let's face it.
That is a fair point, entirely. And I think it's also fair to say there was a lot of excitement about some of the announcements, but I don't think people are entirely blown away. I think there's been a lot of people probably feeling a bit frazzled from virtual events and things like that. And there wasn't massive amounts. Certainly when I first looked at it, there wasn't massive amounts to draw me back. As I've looked back a bit, I think there's been some really good things talked about, and actually some when you get into the detail, there's some nice stuff there. But as a kind of fairly big takeaway, yeah. But the first,
come on, that's not quite right. Look, there were massive takeaways. You know, there was Mesh.
There was Mesh. I was about to say the one thing that I think really kicked off was Mesh, and mostly, and the comment I heard most was, is someone taking drugs at the moment? So for those who don't know, Microsoft Mesh is a new mixed reality platform, I think an underlying service that can help power a lot of mixed reality services. There's AltSpace VR that will bring things together. But in the keynote, and they did a large chunk of the keynotes using Mesh and AltSpace VR and various fancy mixed reality things. But for those watching the video, you can see there was a whale shark spinning around the gentleman whose name I suddenly can't remember. I do apologise to you. And then we have people dancing around a campfire. It went pretty strange. Some impressive stuff, but certainly one of the stranger keynotes I've seen.
It was one of those eye-catching, oh, that looks really interesting. We're in a video game. And I think a lot of people kind of looked at it and went, what is the real world application for this? How are we actually going to use it? It kind of reminded me of SharePoint Spaces, but for meetings. And I think SharePoint Spaces has been one of those technologies that has great potential in the right scenario, but finding that scenario is the challenge. And I think that's potentially what we'll find with Mesh, that there'll be the same challenge of finding the right scenario. Although that being said, it has been used very successfully at conferences. You know, since we've been online, virtual conferences, it's been really good for having those booths for the sponsors. So I think there are definitely more scenarios where it will be likely, although you probably won't have sharks swimming around your head. Don't know, unless you're meeting with the sales people.
Yeah. Touche. But I know they had it for, I think it was Comsverse. They created some really elaborate booths, and you could go and watch a lot of the sessions from AltSpace VR. And I have to admit, my Surface Pro struggled with it a little bit. But the effect of going around the booths and having the voices get louder as you got close and you could listen into conversations, I did like that. I thought that was quite impressive. And if they could bring that into a more casual setting, and I know I think it was Accenture, isn't it, setting it up so you've got drop-in areas there. you can go and chat to people. I quite like that idea. Whether I could cope with having a headset a lot of the time doing it, yeah, maybe. But I think there's some nice stuff coming. And where I feel Microsoft are putting it is, if I look back to the 2000s, the Windows tablet was fantastic, and they were probably slightly ahead of the game, but they just didn't have the usability of things, and they let it drop off. And then suddenly the iPad came along, and all this investment Microsoft had done was wasted pretty much for years and years, and they lost a lot of that. And I think they've invested, if we look 3-4 years ago, Ignite and others, mixed reality, when the HoloLens first came out, was a big thing. I think they're trying to make sure that they don't lose out on this as well, that they're keeping the focus there. I think there's a lot of niches for this technology, like I think, Peter, you were saying with doctors and sort of the NHS, the use of mixed reality there has taken off and has been very useful. Exactly. And I think there are certain areas that can help with that. I know the rail industry was looking at using it and how they can kind of do checks on certain things, and can they help people with it there. There's some really good, important things. And I think what Microsoft's doing is saying, you know what, it hasn't disappeared. That investment is still there. We're getting better and better. It's probably not there for everyone, but it will be soon.
So true. But the thing that struck me about it as well is that they're positioning themselves for not necessarily now, but what's to come. And it made me think of a couple of years ago when I attended Future Decoded in London at the EXL. And the whole theme of it was AI down your throats. And I was thinking at the time, this is not going to take off. This is I'm not laughing now. Because AI is everywhere. I mean, SharePoint. Because
they're watching you, and if you say anything bad, they'll know.
Exactly. So that's what they've probably got in mind, I think.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? If you don't show stuff that is a bit wild, then everything is a bit mundane, and you've got to show it to inspire people. You know, we do it all the time as consultants. We show people everything that something can do, and then people kind of go, okay, well, these are the bits that I'm actually going to use. These are the bits that I can see how to apply. And I think, you know, thinking back to some of the previous Ignites where they've had, you know, teams with HoloLens and the, you know, augmented reality, this has taken it a step further and given you, rather than just having a meeting where you're, you know, all looking at that virtual design in the middle of the room, this is just taking it a step further and having it completely immersive. And I think they've got to show some of this stuff to inspire people so that they get some of those real life use cases coming out of it.
But I think, and you touched on AI, Peter, I think similar to the AI, where what they built out was the ability for everyone to use it with cognitive services, and even building into Power Platform, they made it available. And I think that's what a lot of the meshes and things like the spatial anchors, I've got to be careful how I say that, but where you can kind of connect to things on there, it's making it easier to develop things that can make use of this. So I think there's the services such as that virtual meetings, but there's also opening it up to developers and new ideas that can be expanded. It's that underlying platform that can be used, whether you're using a HoloLens, an Oculus Rift, I think even Google Cardboard and things like that. It is where Microsoft positions itself a lot, is supplying those services that can make these things easier to use. And to me, that's a large part of what Mesh is as well. It's that underlying platform that powers it.
So we'll wait and see whether it just fades away, or whether come the autumn, there's a whole new set of things that they can show us about it.
Yeah. And if anyone's got a HoloLens they want to lend me just so I can test it out, very happy to give that a go. I would say on that, if people do want to get started, April, and I probably should know, I'm going to say Spate, apologies, I've probably completely butchered your name, has got a great link with resources for getting started with mixed reality for Unity. I did a few, I think of that Future Decoded where you're talking about AI, there was, I think the one after that was very mixed reality focused. And I did build a little game that could pull documents from SharePoint, display them over there, and you could grab them and throw things at them. That was great fun. So it is possible to do with a bit of C# and Unity. I'm not too powerful a machine, so seeing as Gary's not there, I'm going to take on the dev role and say, yeah, there's some nice stuff. You can actually go and use this right now, which is good. Moving on from powerful platforms to the Power Platform. Do you see what I did there? That was good.
Oh, very good, very good.
Great segue.
There was some lovely new capabilities and things announced for the Power Platform. Let me bring that up on the screen for those watching on video. And I think the one probably that jumped out that we kind of seen signposted, I know we talked about it in the last show, was PowerFX, a low-code open source programming language across the Power Platform. Now, I might be missing something here. Is this just a rebrand of something that's already there?
Do you know what? I've been looking at the language to see. It looks very, very similar to what's there already.
I'm very confused by it, and I love the fact it's open source. It sounds great, but it just seems to be a better way of talking about what's already in there.
I'm going to leave you two guys to discuss this one because this makes as much sense to me as Yammer.
What, that bad? Really? No, I think I looked at this language, and I think we did talk about it last time. It's kind of like, well, how is it going to work? How is it going to fit in? And it kind of looks a little bit like JSON and a little bit like an Excel formula, and a little bit object oriented with the dots. I just would have to play with it.
Where we talked about it before, and where it was being led was, this is the very low code, easy for everyone. The initial stuff, and I'm going to confess I haven't had time to dig any deeper into it. My initial look was it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like it was going to open it up to a lot more people, sadly.
Do you know what a really significant factor for me looking at the, I think it's in that that article that you've got there, is the they've got a little GIF that goes through it and does a little few iterations through the language. Is it in this one? It might not be this one. And one of the things that really jumps out is that it is, a bit lower down on this, there's only 2 colors. And so if you scroll down a little bit from there.
Sorry for those who are trying to describe it for people listening.
Yeah, they're showing it in code, so Visual Studio Code, and they've got a few screenshots that they go through, and it just doesn't look easy. It looks as easy to read as it would be if it were in Notepad. Yeah, and I think for me that doesn't make it easier for most people to. It makes it easier if there's a little more indication of the purpose of things, and it's not there. And I think for me that's, they're showing it in code, so Visual Studio Code, which immediately, a lot of people, if they're low code, no code, they're going to be going, why do I need to install Visual Studio Code? And I think it's really interesting.
I'm going to put my Gary hat on again and say, but I think that's a good thing if we can get people looking at code and doing things in a more planned way. But I agree with you, Al.
Yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't jump out as being anything significantly different.
I think if anything, the difference is being able to edit this stuff in code. It actually feels like it's more tailored towards the more pro developers.
Which even formula builders would, we've seen it with the low code solutions. Being able to actually do that. I don't know whether it's how different it is though from anything else that we've already got.
Yeah, so I am looking forward to being challenged on that and found to be wrong, but initial was like not quite what I was expecting. Talking of which, the Power Automate desktop now available for all Windows 10 users. I thought that was a really nice move, slightly strange one, but I'm guessing that it's probably not competing that much in the RPA space yet, and maybe opening up to more people to be able to give it a go and encourage. I like the sound of that. When it first came out, was it Ignite 2 years ago, I think?
Yeah,
and it was there on the day, and I tried it. It was pretty nice. I managed to robotic process automation a calculator, what everyone needs, obviously, and that worked quite nicely. But then once I saw the cost, didn't see much value in that. So hopefully that will open up to more.
So is this just a full fat client version of Power Automate?
As I understand it, it's partly that, but it's more about being able to run robotic process automation. So on your desktop, you can program it to point at different things like record actions on the screen and then replay those. Okay. I think somewhere, was it Al, you were talking about sort of doing bulk emails or filling in timesheets, possibly that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where it's like recording a macro on your machine.
Yeah,
you know, I'm going to record all of these actions that I carry out, but I'm not using sort of the flow design surface. I'm using
if you have a legacy app with minimal APIs.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
I think this is where I think their real target for putting it into Windows 10 is that personal automation. You know, where you can't write a flow just to do stuff that's arriving in Office 365. This gives you the ability, if you do have those other applications, to do things, you know, that you might do 10 times a day using a series of different applications. You can do them on your machine. And I think it's interesting that it's baked into Windows 10. I think that was a really interesting. Well, it's not going to be just something that you can download. It's actually baked into Windows 10 as a core component of it.
So it'd be interesting to see how that go. I thought it was some nice announcements. I did see some of these about the Power Virtual Agent bots being able to learn. So with bots, when you're programming it, it's often not very intelligent. You have to cater for each scenario. This will allow you to learn from conversations you've had and refine the topic. So I haven't tried that or seen the details, but that sounded something that could really improve the performance there. But what did catch my eye and have set aside in my backpack to learn more about this is a new and enhanced governance, security and administration capabilities for Power Platform. Before I waffle on, Al, have you managed to dig any deeper into this? Or?
So I've not dug as deeply as I would like, but there is what looks like an awful lot of things. So I think the key one is there's an updated DLP management capability, but they're also talking about things like self-service. They've got various things that in terms of cost optimization, and I guess just making sure that the management and oversight of the whole platform is really starting to be enterprise level, which I think has always been.
Is this things like reduce it, the number of environments that start to spin up, the number of apps? I know there's been the Centre of Excellence. Is this taking on some of that mantle? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Centre of Excellence, has always been filling the gap that the platform didn't offer natively. And I think, with the Centre of Excellence, it's always leading the way, and then those elements are being rolled back into the platform. And I think this is where, this is seeing a lot of those capabilities being rolled back. I think they've got inventory in there now, and they've got, as I say, the self-service, how you can control things in terms of the DLP. All of that is kind of being rolled into this without necessarily being externalized, if you know what I mean. So I think there's a lot of important changes that they're putting in to just make it a bit more robust and give it more of that governance.
Which brings us on nicely to the next topic. Peter, just a bit of warning, you need to wake up now that this is your moment. Security, I know you're allowed to have a quick doze during the Power Platform, but security and compliance, there was some interesting stuff here, and I believe you put quite nice, I'm just trying to find it and bring it up now, a nice live blog on this, Peter, on the tech community site.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is particularly with security compliance relating to Teams. There's a lot of very, very good announcements that came out in relation to that. So I was lucky enough to moderate on one of the talks, which was secure and compliant collaboration with Microsoft Teams with John Gruszek. And he was explaining some of the new features that were coming out. He was talking about adaptive cards. Adaptive cards are now going to be in scope. So for compliance capabilities for Microsoft Teams. For compliance capabilities with Microsoft Teams. So what it means is more than 70% of Teams apps today will generate card content in Teams conversations. So when an app posts a card to a chat, the content of that card will now be visible in things like e-discovery, can it be preserved legal hold, covered by retention policies, and appear in the orders log. So
yeah,
very, very cool stuff. So that was one thing.
How would that work because some of those cards, like in email, some of those cards are dynamic. Will it kind of cater for that as well, or?
Not sure yet. I've not got any deeper than what was announced yet, and had a chance to play with it. So definitely more drilling down to be done on that particular one. But I was very impressed with the sound of that. I think that's anything that adds to compliance capabilities for me is a big thing straight off the bat. But so watch this space there with that one, I would say. But the other things, some quick other highlights: Teams Multi Geo. So in the subject, the very critical subject of data residency, Microsoft have listened. They said on this talk that they've listened very carefully to customer feedback, and in response to that, they're extending the Multi Geo support to include Microsoft Teams. So you'll be able to specify where your Teams data at rest will sit. You'll be able to set the geolocation for both individuals, users, and teams. And this rollout is planned for the second quarter of this year. So whenever that may be. Just
to clarify for anyone, the multi-geo it's where your data is located.
Correct,
so,
yes.
Say, Peter, you were in Singapore and I was based in the UK and Al's in New York. Then you want your data to be resident in those places. And they've had that for Exchange and SharePoint.
Yes.
OneDrive was kind of come with those as well. Yeah. And now Teams is going to have that as well.
Exactly that.
So you define that on a user and a team basis then?
Correct. Yes, absolutely. It'll be for user or team basis, both individual users and for teams. And this is going to be very, very welcome news for, as you say, organizations who have that global footprint and have very specific data residency obligations.
I know there was a few concerns when that first came out about the number of people you needed to have in a geo to be able to use that. I think it was 1,000 or something, or even 5,000. It was quite high, and then they brought it down a little bit lower. But I'm hoping that's available for more people.
Yes.
To be multinational, you don't have to be huge to want the benefits of that.
This is true. This is very true, and I think multi-geo has proved difficult to implement sometimes. For some organisations, there are a few gotchas that you have to watch out for. And
I think as a technology, it's been quite challenging to implement from a technical perspective.
Very
and
much
I think
so.
that's been, hopefully all of those issues have ironed out, and they are basically leveraging what's there already, but just making it easier to manage that, because it will be based on the sites and the users. So it'll be interesting to see how much further they need to go to get that actually properly rolled out and adopted, and whether it does come as H2 or whether it goes further.
Exactly. Yeah. So a couple more things. Secure Score was mentioned. So the Microsoft Secure Score, if you don't know what it is, it helps you prevent unwanted incidents across your M365 services. So it includes things like Exchange Online, Azure AD, Defender for Endpoint and Identity, Cloud App Security, and now Teams has recently been brought into the scope for Secure Score as well. So you can use your Secure Score to in relation to Teams, and more configuration best practices will be coming soon. Microsoft announced on this particular event, so definitely something to watch this space for.
And I know a lot of the team stuff is kind of E5 related, but presumably with that secure score, you're still going to be able to do things hopefully at a lower level than that. It's configuration. I mean, I guess even sort of defining which apps you have, make sure you define the right policies. Hopefully it will.
Yeah. Exactly.
Hopefully it will consider all levels, because
I hope so.
It's been a little challenge with security and compliance with Teams.
So true. I mean, a classic example of that is DLP. You need an E5 license to do DLP with Teams, which is bonkers. I just don't get that.
Real shame. Yeah.
It is that. But another one that caught my eye was Azure Sentinel. So Azure Sentinel, if you don't know what it is beyond prevention. This gives you the ability to detect when an intrusion event is happening, So in Teams, Microsoft have been bolstering the events that are collected by the audit log, so that now SIEM tools, security information and event management tools, in this case Azure Sentinel, can now analyze what's going on within Teams and be on the lookout for threats, and use some of the great features in Sentinel like playbooks to be able to respond to those threats. So that's a good one as well. And Azure Sentinel is definitely something that I think is going to get more and more important.
They've integrated it in terms of the schema and the events and everything with Defender as well. So exactly. It's very much more common in terms of how you respond to incidents. Which will make everything so much easier just to go, okay, I know where I'm detecting things, but I can have the same approach to how I respond.
Absolutely. So yeah, lots of good stuff going on. I mean, I don't want to hog the conversation too much, but there was things about meeting safety was discussed. Things like who can present the content.
Don't walk during a meeting because you'll end up going into a lamppost, that kind of thing.
No,
that's the AI we need.
Walking meetings are good. You get the exercise, and
as long as you see the lamppost, absolutely.
Exactly.
I think one that caught my eye, it was DLP for Chrome and being able to roll out DLP policies to legacy SharePoint environments as well. So I think absolutely. That's extending those DLP.
And when you say legacy SharePoint,
well, because it's browser based,
you're not talking about 2003 or.
I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't think so, but it's basically being able to say, if you're using a web browser, these are the DLP policies that you can put in place to make sure that actually you're not actually taking content out. So we've had it in Edge for a while, but now it's in Chrome as well. So they're covering, two of the main browsers that most organizations use.
So that's not specific to SharePoint, but could be used for SharePoint effectively. That's really interesting.
Exactly.
Just in case you are listening, that is no excuse still to be on 2003 or SharePoint 2010 or 2007.
Absolutely.
Time to move.
Absolutely.
When you can.
I think one of the big ones that caught my eye, and I know it caught your eye as well, Peter, is the ability to co-author encrypted documents. So where you do have information protection and sensitivity labels and you're actually encrypting, you can now co-author, which is fantastic. I mean, it took a long time just to be able to search them. Now to be able to co-author them. Yeah. I mean, that's a massive one. I think it just means a lot of organizations will be a lot more comfortable approaching encryption as a security mechanism within information protection.
And is there any caveat to that? Do you get the same experience as if they're not encrypted?
As far as I know, I need to test it, but I haven't seen any indication. I guess the key thing is that where you're encrypting it and then saying who can decrypt it. So being able to say on the fly who can decrypt it, I guess that's one of the key things that was one of the reasons why search was always a challenge, to be able to decrypt it when you're doing the search indexing. But I think this, as an end user capability, this is a really, really strong one.
That did delay adoption for a lot of customers in terms of information protection. So people have responded very positively to that one already, without a doubt.
And is that, I'm trying to see from this link, is that coming soon or out now?
I thought everything at Ignite was coming soon.
Let's just take
Whilst you're looking for that, I think the other thing that caught my eye around the sensitivity labels was changes to Azure Purview, which essentially is the tool that you can use to then apply sensitivity labels to your data as well as your documents. And a really interesting one here is that they're now stretching out to other clouds, being able to actually, classify content that's stored in AWS S3, just extends it out. So if you've got Salesforce and you're hosting it there, you can actually start to actually classify that content. So SAP as your what you do is your databases, Oracle databases, I think is really interesting, because it starts to put the information protection at the core of an organization, not just the core of the Microsoft estate.
And I found it interesting, Ignite, because initially when Purview came out, it seemed to be a lot talking about the data catalog and how you find and access your data. It felt like this Ignite, there was more of a push towards the security and identifying your data from a sensitivity, from a security and compliance view, rather than just, oh, I want to go and find a list of people. What's the central place to go to? And I think it does both, but there seems to be that kind of twist in messaging slightly, or alternative messaging around it.
I think the Azure Data Catalog still exists, which was that original curation service. And I think this is Purview has been positioned as the, it's the security, it's the lineage, it's the tracking of the data, as opposed to just saying this is the best location to go and get that data from. But yeah,
which I think makes sense from I think a lot of people, when they looked at it, went, how much does it cost? Just for having a data catalog is a lot of money. For something that will put in the security and compliance, so like, I can. There's a lot more value in that.
There's a lot more to it than that. And I mean, in the data world, we've got data all over the place. It's not just one location, and that's always been a challenge. But to be able to see all of the data that is sensitive from all of your different data sources, whether it's structured, unstructured, Office 365, AWS, Azure. I mean, that's a very powerful proposition for a lot of organizations.
Absolutely, yeah. I think my customers that I've talked about information protection a long time have asked for things like this. Well, can I protect things outside of Microsoft 365? And up until now, no. So this is a massive step, and I could see this sort of taking off more and more into things like cloud app security, where you can manage all of your SaaS apps, Microsoft or otherwise, and apply governance from there as well. So lots of good possibilities, I think, there.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, similar to what I was saying with Mesh, it's why Microsoft's position itself is to be able to go across everything. It's the same with, Windows and PCs. You go to Apple, you get that ecosystem, less choice, but it works well. Now what Microsoft's doing is similar to what they were doing Windows. You can plug in different memory as you could with your old boxes. It's the same with these things. And I think it's a risky move because you're reliant on other people telling you when they change things, which is always fun, but is what people want. And if you can do it well, and they seem to be so far, it's a powerful position to be in.
Completely. I think Microsoft have adapted well in recent years with that sort of mentality. Another good example is how they knew when to call it a day on their own mobile operating system and say, Android's going to do this for us.
Don't make me sad.
Were you a fan?
I love my Windows phone.
Oh.
I'm trying to remember how much I can talk about something else, but we might come back to that conversation in a minute. The one bit, and I'm going to get told off because this isn't really security and compliance, but I still harbour a love for Cosmos DB. I think it's a fantastic database, very scalable. And I remember almost losing my love for it when the promise of being able to restore a deleted database within a day. We were about 6 days in trying to get this prod database restored with a very angry client. I can see now that you can get continuous backup and point-in-time restore for up to 30 days. So wherever you are within 30 days, you can get something restored to from that point. And I think that's fantastic and quite impressive, to be honest. So another good reason to use Cosmos DB if you're not already.
Cool.
Right, moving. I think we covered all this security and compliance news.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll put a lot into the show notes. There's a lot of other stuff out there, but yeah, I think we covered most of the key things.
The only one was the one, Peter, you mentioned that Satya Nadella put out a few days ago. Of a cloud built for the next decade, which triggered some interesting conversation. So a lovely, it was an excerpt from the keynote, and one of the comments, the sort of 5 key attributes that will drive the next generation, and one of those, I think it was the 5th one, was trust by design. And I think, Al, you kind of went, I'm not sure I like the sound of that.
I mean, I think it's an interesting combination of words, and I think before we started, Peter and I were talking about this. Kind of goes against everything we understand around the zero trust approach. And the zero trust approach is what is underpinning everything to do with Microsoft's security posture. Don't trust anybody. Authenticate them all the time. Ensure that you are making sure that you trust them by checking all the time and asking all the time. And that's where trust by design. Contextually, we all thought, well, that sounds contradictory. And I think
I just don't get it.
I think reading the words, that doesn't fully explain it. But my interpretation of it is that it's, you have to trust the technology and trust that it's been designed properly, and that it is zero trust as an approach.
I think also it's not just security and compliance area that he's talking about here, that Satchel's talking about. It's also about AI. It's building an application that people can trust, and you're sharing it and being very clear how you're using people's data, what you're doing with things as well. So it's thinking about trust when you design rather than trust by design and kind of assuming everything's good. And
it's I guess it's just it's an unfortunate combination of words.
Absolutely.
It makes much more sense when you say it that way. I was wondering, is the URL genuine? Is this for real?
LinkedIn, you can't trust it by design. Moving on. I think we covered a few bits with security and compliance with Teams, but there was some interesting other news. We kind of in the show before talked a bit about webinars and whether that would be a kind of separate thing. I think no, Al, it seems to be basically prior to a meeting, whether it's I think it was mostly for Teams meeting, but it could be for live events. It wasn't somewhere in the middle. It would sit in front of all of them that people could sign up for events.
It's almost a sliding scale where we know live events are very different. It's a kind of a sliding scale they're introducing to go, actually, you can front a meeting with a registration page, and then you have more control as to who can present, who can't. So I think you've still got live events for that scale, that all hands kind of multinational scale, but you can do webinars as a Teams meeting with a front end of a registration page, which I think is a perfect approach.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I've not been able to test it yet. It's not appeared in any of the tenants that I have just yet, but I watched one of the Ignite events on exactly this, and how it was explained was that the live events, which aren't going anywhere, was a common question, are less participatory. They're more broadcast, and live events, you can get people more involved, and you can have 1,000 people on webinars who can participate, sort of unmute themselves and participate, and then there's that overspill, which currently is 20,000 people who can view only, which they say will go back down to 10,000 after the pandemic, which who knows. That's what they say.
That's interesting.
Why would they put it down?
Well,
what's what I thought.
What's the limit on live events?
I think it's the same. Live events was 10,000 and went up to 20,000. Yeah. So the set webinars the same, but they have said they will revert it, which I find surprising.
Yeah. I guess it's you need to still keep people intrigued by the live events, and if you can have the same number of people, maybe the live events will stay at 20,000 and the webinars will be 10,000.
I don't think I want 20,000 people on a Teams meeting with a chat going on. I certainly wouldn't.
I don't think
I'll be talking at that meeting.
But I think 1,000 people interacting is more than enough.
Absolutely.
Especially if they can just do the little emojis and put the feedback.
And how have we not talked about this already in the keynote? The most annoying beep, 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 as everyone was replying to the different things, and I love people's ability to react, but please build in that ability to mute it as well, so it doesn't interrupt everyone else's thing. I think Al, you, Gary, and I were just saying, "What is that noise? What's going on throughout that?"
Yeah.
Do you know, I was going to have a little bubble machine. I forgot about that for the next recording. Oh, darn it.
But yeah, I think there were a load of other things that I thought were interesting around Teams and the integration with Dynamics. And
actually, before we cover Dynamics, because that will lead nicely into the next section, to me, the biggest news was shared channels. I think it's an awful name because I don't think it shows quite how exciting it is. But this is ability to basically have a channel or a team appear in your own tenant when it's actually from a different tenant, so you're not constantly switching between. And I know the three of us often speak at events and attend events, and you get a separate Teams tenant for each one, and then someone messages on the other one, and you can't change because you're in the middle of watching something, so you go to your phone, and then there's another one, so you've got to swap your phone over to that. This sounds like a great way that could solve that. And I think for people who deal with a lot of clients or different third parties, that ability to have that single team without switching tenants, really like that idea. I think that can be very powerful.
Yeah, I haven't looked into this one in enough detail yet, but I guess the question is going to be, what's the architecture look like underneath it? And can you do everything with them that you can do with a standard team? Because we saw it with one of the big pushbacks on private channels was the limitation on the number and what you could and couldn't put into them in terms of the tabs. So I think it'll be interesting to see where those limitations kick in. Can I have a planner tab that I'm sharing within that channel that is secured in the right way? So I think there'll be some interesting exploration of the boundaries around this.
Yeah, and I don't think they've said yet, because I did try and do a little bit of digging for exactly that scenario with the joys of Planner and private channels, but I don't think they've said, and I don't think they've said when it's not out yet. So the webinars, and I know Peter, you said it hasn't hit your tenant, but I have seen a few people mention it's in theirs, so I think that's rolling out pretty soon. I haven't seen shared channels to see when that's appearing. I'll try and dig it out and any links and put that in the show notes.
Well, webinars is meant to be rolling out from now through April, I believe. I'm not sure about shared channels, though, I must admit.
Yeah, I'll try and dig her out. But sorry, Al, I cut you off as you were about to talk about Dynamics, because, there was some interesting Teams news there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so the first thing that caught my eye was Dynamics 365 Human Resources starting to surface things in Teams, which immediately made me think of Viva and the employee experience forum. And then reading more about the Dynamics announcements, there's a lot more where there is a tighter integration with Teams. And one thing that really caught my eye was the ability for customer service in Dynamics to be able to bring in a chat from Teams, so that agents can actually chat, find the right expert, ask the question, which suddenly made me think, wait a second, they're taking an element out of Teams and they're embedding it somewhere else, which opens up all sorts of different sort of potential of, if I can take just the chat and put it somewhere else, what else could I possibly do? Which I think raises some really interesting questions about how you can embed Teams elements in some of the other tools and platforms that we use. Putting a Teams chat into a Power Platform Canvas app that you've got on a mobile device, how cool would that be? So some interesting potential ideas are sort of like
that is interesting, because we're always talking about how do we get things from other things into Teams rather than the other way around. Exactly. And
Microsoft is anyway.
So it was just a really interesting kind of like, well, wait a second, whilst they're putting a lot of things into Teams from Dynamics, they're actually looking at the other direction as well, especially for line of business applications. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to, I'm working as an agent, customer service, I'm going to be in Dynamics all day. I may as well have my Teams chat in there as well and embedded into the application that I'm using. But
I have to admit, I missed this one when it was first announced, but I know Lisa and Megan from the Up podcast, I was listening to at the weekends, and their Ignite Roundup, which I highly recommend. Do have a listen. And obviously they're slightly more Dynamics focused, and they were very excited about that ability to chat from within Dynamics, talking about how Salesforce has had chatter for a long time. There's a lot of that ability, and I know salespeople are often very chatty, so the ability to be able to do it right there and then.
Yeah, but they never use Dynamics though.
True. But I thought this was a really interesting one. and that ability. And I hadn't taken that slant on it, Al. I like that idea. And also they've got the Azure communication services, which is kind of your develop your own teams almost with the platform behind it, which could do that. But I think you're right, to be able to get that just using Teams could intriguing. Now you touched on there about the human resources and Viva. I think there was quite a few bits of Viva news. Just very quickly before I move on to that, while I was speaking, I promise I was listening, but Teams Connect, which is the sharing, June 2021, apparently it's going to roll out. So not too far to wait for that one, which looks quite good. So coming soon on the roadmap, that one. But when we come to Viva, I thought of some interesting announcements. I was possibly expecting a bit more. Viva was quite new, so probably wasn't going to be massive amounts on there. I think there was quite a bit about Viva connections, and the big news there was that it isn't going to be an extra license, which I think is always good news. Getting stuff that you've already when you've already paid for those licenses is some definitely useful on that. And I just trying to bring up some of the details which I thought was in there. There we go. So the Viva connections I think will be very nice, and especially the view of the dashboard. So I said I'd mention Windows Phone 8 again. Do you know what? I see Windows Phone 8 there on the front page of your SharePoint site as a set of dashboards.
It lives on.
It's going to be alive again. Hopefully we'll get some little notifications and stuff like that. And yeah, I think it'll be. So that means
we're not going to get any apps in that side then.
Sorry.
Does that mean we're not going to get any apps in that right-hand panel?
Well, I've got to be a little bit careful here, but I think the intention is that you can interact with these dashboards, so they're not just going to be active. What's it, call to action buttons, as you can already do at the moment. These aren't going to be quick links. These will be dynamic views of things and areas that you can interact with as well. I don't think I'm giving anything away by saying anything along that lines.
So more than Windows Phone then.
Not falling for that. But yeah, I mean, you can see there's headspace, and I think that, talking about the what I'm showing on the screen, expenses. I think the view will be this isn't going to be just Microsoft content. It's not just going to be sharing news. It's going to be pulling from other platforms, and I think this is where the big Viva push is: be able to be the platform that allows to connect people to all these different things. Connect to people, that's where the Viva Connections is, but also that connect to other systems, connect to third-party products, give people what they want in an easy way. And I think the Viva Connections will bring a lot of that.
I think for me, that's where that image and the Dynamics HR sort of, we can surface stuff. That's where it started to come together to really mesh it. No, I shouldn't use that word. We're not meshing it all together. But yeah, bringing it all
floating around in a campfire you can dance around, and check your expenses there as well.
Because I think the thing, that what you have on the screen in terms of that screenshot of, what connections looks like, it doesn't look like Teams. You have to look very hard to see that it's Teams. And that's really, I think that's really important, because it's showing everything coming together. It's like we used to see, we've got a browser, but we've got the Chrome of the browser, top, bottom. Now it's the Chrome of Teams, but we can still see exactly what we expect from an intranet.
Yeah, it's only that app roll on the left that gives it away, isn't it, when you look closer?
And what did Louise call it? Blurple.
Blurple, yes. the blurple at the top there.
The blurple, love that.
So yeah, I think connections. Yeah, I think there's certainly some people are kind of going, what is this? What is the difference to just standard SharePoint? The answer will be, I think, these dashboards and integrating a lot more things and having them be dynamic. I think the feed and being able to inject things into that feed will be very interesting. Be just as interesting to see how that sits alongside your activity feed in Teams and things like that as well. That will be intriguing to see how they balance between the two, and whether it's kind of becomes one and the same, or whether it's something big around that. But lots of capability, and you're going to get it for free, which is the exciting news from
Always nice. Always nice. I do think you're right, Kev, though, in that everything Viva and the wider Project Cortex we're getting it drip fed, really, aren't we? It's coming very, very slowly. Hopefully much more to come, though.
I think there will be, and you talked about the Cortex stuff. I thought it was some fantastic syntax announcements, which I think went under the radar slightly, possibly because you need to have used it a bit. And I know, Peter, you've had a great series, which I must remember to put in the show notes, investigating syntax, and you've been really impressed with it so far.
I have, very much so, yeah, and I've learned it as I go. Really, I've wrote about it as I'm learning about it, and it's a little bit out of my usual comfort zone, really, this sort of thing. But it's all about, as you would term it yourself, knowledge management and creating document understanding models and extracting content from the documents that you upload into SharePoint and getting meaningful content out. And this is extrapolated and displayed in columns, so you can have all sorts of columns in SharePoint document libraries which show that this is a particular document type and content from within the document. So I use the example in my blog series of my own payslips, which I had as PDF. They were the easiest PDFs that I could grab. I've got very little real data to play with myself, and I couldn't really find anything decent in the demo tenants, the Contoso tenants, that I could use as sample data. So I thought, I'll use my pay slips and I'll extract things like the paid date and a certain reference on it, and display that in certain columns, and had to be careful to redact some of the personal information.
I was just saying, that's a very brave test of things, but
yeah.
Funny enough, you actually appeared in my sample set I did for one of the Collab 365 conferences, because I took a set of slide decks and used one of yours that had been uploaded to pick out the name and the title of each of the sessions. So
cool. Yeah,
but I think from the Ignite news, what I liked was a new find function. So when you're creating your document understanding models, you want to pull out key information. You need to work out where that is, and they're adding a new way of finding that by bits of text as well. So they've called it interesting. They call it the find function, and I notice on the screenshot they call it search, which is a little confusing, but hopefully that should be good. And I think I've certainly found some situations where it's quite hard to get to the right position and training the models. There's definitely some exceptions that become hard to sort out, and I think that find one will certainly make it easier as well.
I think so. Is that in relation? Do you find that you were getting a lot of mismatches when you were doing your initial? Yeah. So that'll address that. That's awesome.
The classic one I had was people would, it's certainly in the Western world, people generally have two names, but you throw three names into there and it wasn't matching it correctly. That sort of thing. You had to put exceptions in for that. Hopefully that will pick up things. And some new compliance updates. So retention labels are now available for form processing models.
Oh, cool.
So, which is
I didn't
very
catch
nice.
that one. Because that was one of the nice things that I found you could do with the document understanding models, that you can apply a retention label as part of that. But with the forms processing, that's brilliant that you can do it with that now. The only thing with the forms processing, of course, is that you do need the advanced AI licensing, don't you? Which is going to put a lot of people off, because it's not cheap at all.
Yeah. But I think the other thing, I can't remember where this was, but in the cognitive services, there's a new forms processing cognitive service there, and I think there was some enhancements to that. So, you know what? If you don't like it, grab a developer and build your own. It's not too hard.
So true.
And that's, a lot of this is built on those Azure services already. If you don't want everything that's there are some options to go and build it.
Yeah, I think that's the key premise of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
we're making it easy. And if we're making it easy, we're putting the hard work in. You've got to pay a little bit towards that. Otherwise, you can go and build it yourself.
Go and do it yourself. Yeah. Go through all the pain that we've hit. And
then you'll come back and pay us for it, won't you?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's their hope and aim. there was some interesting. I'm not going to cover. I don't know, Al, if you saw anything on Viva Insights. I'll leave that with you to ponder a sec. But I thought there was some nice stuff on Viva topics and kind of what's coming with that. I think with the topics, the big thing that they kind of announced when it first came out, it is that ability within Teams, within your email, to recognize those topics and auto highlight those, so you can click and drill down into the knowledge pages, the topic pages that are already being created. I think that integration into Teams, so you can find those, really will bring a lot of value, and that's going to be rolling out through this year, and it'll be really good to see that. I'm sure this will be really exciting for someone somewhere, but there will be Bing integration for Viva topics. I'm sure that one person there will be very excited about that. I keep trying to use this, and it just, I'll be honest, it doesn't stick. I love it, it's there, and it looks great, but yeah, I do use Bing. I just very rarely, if I'm looking for something internal, I go internal. If I'm looking for something external, I'll use Bing. So it's rare that I see their crossover, to be honest.
It's one that you have to really work hard to think, I'm going to use Bing and try it out. I've been trying to use it to actually try and find stuff and see how well it actually does work. It does actually work pretty well. It works surprisingly well.
Absolutely.
I actually prefer the interface for it than the search interface in Office 365. I find it's easier. But yeah,
just getting that habit.
It's getting that habit. Yeah, using Edge with Bing, it's a great starting point. And then obviously with your vertical tabs there as well. Yeah,
do you like my vertical tabs? It's taken a little while to get used to, but I like it. So on the screen, we're just showing the Viva topics. Susan Hanley, and we'll put this in the show notes, has pulled together a great session of a lot of the roadmap slides that she's picked up from many of the Ignite sessions, including Viva topics. And I'm glad to see, hopefully coming soon, is the APIs for Viva topics. Obviously, if you do have the dev tools, you can see a little bit what's going on. I won't encourage that too much, but it would be good to see. I'm sure build is coming up soon, and that's developer focus. Maybe we'll see something hopefully before then, but be worth keeping an eye out for that one. There's a few around SharePoint, Yammer, and Stream. Yes, Yammer is still there. For those of you who are wondering. So I think there's some Q&A in Teams meetings coming up, interactive Yammer digest, live event insights, and a new Yammer desktop, which is a progressive web app, which sounds strangely what you can do already. Probably the biggest thing on Yammer, though, is data retention. So getting the security and compliance details into Yammer, which I think will go down very well for some people.
I think that's absolutely crucial for a lot of people.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we're seeing Viva, a lot of the Viva public APIs and the Connections Desktop API learning public preview coming up fairly soon, which would be good. And Al, was there anything you saw particularly around Viva Insights?
Nothing particular. I'm waiting to see how Workplace Analytics and Viva Insights come together, but I've not seen anything that really explains, I guess, where that balance is going to be struck between what will be sort of the complex scenarios and all the way down through the productivity score to My Analytics. I think there's still clarity on how that will be presented, because a lot of people love the My Analytics. Productivity score is not used massively at the moment, but should be used more. And the Workplace Analytics, I think, when I've spoken to clients about it, there's awesome potential there for how that could be used. But we need to understand how it's going to really gel with the Viva topic, the Viva Insights element.
Yeah. And then the very last thing I think I saw that doesn't feel like new use, but they're certainly bundling it as, because I think it was previously known as Project Mocha, and that was the Outlook boards. So that ability to have a kind of single view of a few different elements, like your calendar, and then you could add the weather to it. Sounding a little bit like SharePoint, but
I think it's really interesting.
Creating your own personal board where you can see everything in one go.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that they put this out, because I kind of looked at it and I went, is that really useful? And how big a screen do you need? Because I know I look at my calendar, I'm like, yeah, okay, I need to stick on a wide screen to see all the meetings that I've got going on. And I think it's one of those things. Mocha was in the private Outlook commercial, personal, wasn't it? And I look at this and I go, it could be really useful. I see some massive potential with putting the tasks and having some of those to-do capabilities built in there, and having more visibility of the things that you need to do within to-do and planner, and having that in the same context. I think that's a really powerful potential, because I know when I do demos of to-do and the integration with Outlook for the web, being able to drag, tasks over into the calendar. If you get that kind of drag and drop between different tools, that could be really powerful. So I'm excited to see what it can do, because I think it could be a really useful next step to see, your email, your calendar, your tasks, one panel done, which would be good.
Yeah, would be nice. Just
Yeah, I can tell. I'm gonna have to do a demo for you, and then it'll revolutionize your life. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts from this? I was about to say this year's Ignite, this half year's Ignite, I should say.
This spring
part one.
Spring night.
Yeah, spring night. Yeah, fantastic. No, I think we've covered just about everything that not everything, but everything that caught our eye, because there was so much, and I'm going to be going back and looking at the backpack, as you mentioned, and trying to do things like the Cloud Skills Challenge and get a nice little exam voucher. And I want to get my Cloud Skills Challenge badge this time. I was talking to Chris Horde about this, and he got his last time and this time, and I'm still waiting for mine from last time. I didn't get a lovely badge, so I'm a bit upset about that. So I'm hoping I'll get it this time.
All about badges, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I think what caught my eye was going through the book of news. The first half of it is all Azure, and then you get all of the rest. And there's so much, I mean, we say that, it wasn't necessarily a lot of wow factors, but there's so much change and so much improvement to things.
Yeah.
And the fact that we've got this twice a year is
Plus
really,
mills.
is really quite phenomenal how much continuous development is actually going into all of these platforms that we use day in, day out. And it just goes to show how hard Microsoft are working to push these forward, but also how hard we need to work to actually stay on top of what they actually can do.
Yeah, completely,
absolutely.
And I think it's a really good point. I think the continuous improvement's amazing, and I think it's, we all want the nice big shiny big announcements that make go, ooh, I like that. But the reality is, it's often a chance to look back at what has happened over the last few months and go, oh yeah, that actually would be useful for so-and-so, or that would be useful for so-and-so, or for this topic, and things like that. So it is a good chance to sort of sit and reflect and remind yourself of the things you've missed as well. So even if there weren't always the big glitzy announcements that you maybe were hoping for, Microsoft Search in Teams, then there is lots of good stuff in there. So do go back.
You do have the wow factor of Mesh and all of those things to
absolutely
inspire us as well. So yeah.
Talking of wow factor, we will very quickly go through some of the events coming up. If you are listening to this on Tuesday the 9th, hopefully it's not too late. You can come and join us where we talk about the happy hour etiquette. So myself, Carolina, Moraine and Louise Fries will be talking about the etiquette. I think, Al, unfortunately, you're missing tomorrow's, aren't you?
I am, unfortunately, yes.
And poor Gary's off and feeling ill, so I don't think he's going to be there either. But the grey of grey hat beards will be holding up the own, and we're talking about the etiquette employee experience. So do come join us. Good chance to have a chat. So it's not just one way. We do encourage people to say what they think as well. So it'd be good to see that one. Peter, I think you're speaking tomorrow as well. The Women in Teams event.
I am indeed, yes. I'm one of the early male allies in the very new Women in Teams group that was formed last month and had its inaugural event, which is absolutely brilliant. I'm very, very happy to be a male ally and part of that group. So looking forward to speaking with the group tomorrow and giving my perspective as a male in IT and working with females in IT over many years. And I mean, I joined it really just to listen and learn, and as much as anything, and try and be a voice for a lot of the issues that our amazing females in tech come across, because there's still a lot of work to be done there. So looking forward to it very much. So.
And sorry for that impromptu applause there, but I think you hit the key things. Is that's listening and learning, listening and hearing what the struggles that people face are, not just telling people things. Yeah, us blokes often tend to stumble over things. So taking a moment to listen and learning about what it is, and hopefully thinking about your own behaviour as part of that. So yeah, I really impressed. It is International Women's Day. There are so many fantastic women in technology that do a great job. So the more we can learn from them, the more we can learn about how we may be making life harder, the better, I think.
Absolutely.
And how we can improve that. I should add to finish off that sentence. Yeah, so I think that's brilliant news. Talking of strong, powerful women, Al, you've got the London Power Platform User Group. A couple of those coming up.
Absolutely.
Powerful platform. Sorry.
Yep. So yeah, on Thursday. So we've got Louise Fries and Carmen. I never know how to pronounce this one. Yeah. So they're doing a great solution that they've put together. And then we've also got Benedict Bergman. So yeah, couple of great speakers. Well, 3 great speakers. I can't even.
I was
about
to say
anymore.
who you were going to say.
Yeah.
Who wasn't there for a minute.
So yeah, so that's definitely well worth coming along to on Thursday.
Should be a great session. Oh, it must be getting close to where we might actually be able to do that in person as well.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
And then Al, you're going to be teaching us about security and compliance explained.
I'm going, core concepts. So this is just going through essentially the basics of security and compliance, and trying to remove the jargon and explain what all of the bits and pieces actually do. So this is for an Azure user group. So yeah, it's online. So yeah, that should be a good one. And
talking security and compliance, the pair of you together are running the security and compliance user group.
We are indeed, and we've got Albert Hoting doing Teams Architecture for Compliance, which will be, if you haven't seen Albert before, very knowledgeable fella, knows his stuff. And then Thijs Lecomte, and I'm really looking forward to this session. Setting up your first Azure Sentinel environment in 50 minutes.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Al. I literally can't wait to see that. That's going to be so good.
Yeah, that's going to be great.
Yeah.
Just looking, I think that's Easter holidays for Cubs on the 31st, so I should be able to join that one. Especially that latter session. Azure Sentinel's definitely been on my, I really should learn more about this. So yeah. That sounds like a good way to get into it.
Should be really good.
Yeah. Do you know how I learned Azure Sentinel, or at least enough about Azure Sentinel? Is my first book, the MS500 exam guide. They changed the outline and included a Sentinel chapter in it. So I basically learned what I needed to know to write the chapter. So hopefully it's enough in the second edition of the book.
So, Kevin, you got that up on screen, but you don't have attend. You haven't signed up for it yet.
So I am following your group, and I didn't because I was thinking it was Cubs, because usually that's exactly the time I'm talking to the Cubs. But you're right, I am actually available then. So there we go. I've signed up for it now.
And we got some great guests lined up in the coming months. Haven't we, Al?
We do.
Really good speakers lined up, so much more to come. And we've been really blown away by the reaction to this. The first event was superb. Thank you, everyone, if you're listening, if you were there. It made our day to have so many great people there and so many great questions. I didn't know all the answers, but still getting to some of them. But that's the beauty of this, isn't it?
Yeah, we're still learning. That's why we have all these experts come on and tell us things.
Exactly.
And talking of experts, you are speaking, Peter, at the was it Teams Day 3?
Teams Day Online 3, yes.
Teams Day Online 3.
April 7th, I believe it is. I'm somewhere down here on this list. I'm talking about Teams policies. And there you go, protecting your Microsoft Teams environment with Teams policies. So when to use them, how to use them, what they do. And at the very least, I'll give you one little preview of what I always recommend when you're using Teams policies. If you do nothing else, do them for the apps in Teams, because oh my gosh, if that's wide open by default, and if you don't control it, then yeah, you've got all sorts of problems.
As we mentioned on the last Grey Hat Beard, if you haven't turned off that Milestones app and the what's the other one, dashboards, isn't it? You're going to get an awful lot of Dataverse environments. So turn that off if you haven't got any control over that yet. Definitely worthwhile.
Block the apps, because you can't block Dataverse.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Peter, for that last minute. We've taken up far too much of your evening, so really appreciate it. We'll let you get off shortly, but thank you for sharing your insight, especially on the security and compliance side and the team side of things from Ignite.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys. Anytime.
We will be back definitely in 2 weeks. I think we're hoping to get something in for next week, but we are having trouble squeezing everything in at the moment. And I think that's certainly why I haven't seen as much of Ignite as I'd like to. It's all got a bit busy, but we will be back definitely in 2 weeks, hopefully before, and we'll have a nice guest lined up as well then. Otherwise, thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy your week. Do go back and listen to the rest of Ignite. I've been Gray.
I've been Hat.
And I've been Honorary Beard, or as Kev once called me on the last episode, Cousinette.
Thank you very much, everyone, and speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.